أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات بجمع. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Continuation of last night's majlis. I recited the same verse which I recited last night from Surah Nisa, chapter 4, verse number 1, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing all of mankind. It says, Ya ayyuhan nas, fear Allah, ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum, the Allah, the Lord who has created you, and the one who created your souls from yourselves, and He created from these two and scattered numerous men and women from them. This ayat was used last night, and we recited it when we are discussing the topic of the status of women in Islam. Taking this opportunity because obviously these are the nights when we are commemorating the shahadat of the highest lady in the universe, not just Islam, but even outside of the realm of Islam, not in the paradise, but also in Alameen, Janab Fatimatu Zahra Salamullahi alayha, who is the leader of the women as well as the men of paradise and Alameen, and taking this opportunity to discuss in regards to what Islam has mentioned as in regards to the status of women. And unfortunately, what we have heard or what we have seen or what is being propagated against the doctrines of Islam as to Islam, does injustice towards the women, Islam does not give them equal rights, and so on and so forth. We have mentioned a few questions or posed a few questions last night, and we tried to answer them as well. Inshallah, tonight we will continue from where we had left off and have a conclusion towards the end as to what is it that we are trying to drive from this topic as far as the status of women is concerned. We talked about last night when we were discussing that as far as the rights are concerned or the huquq that have been laid down, we talked about that Quran is not just a book of law, but in fact, if you look at Quran, only 500 or 600 ayats of Quran talk about the law. Remaining 6,000 verses of Quran are not talking about the law. Therefore, we understand that this is not a book of only law, although it does give us laws, but it is also a book of history. It is also a book which advises mankind every step of the way, and the prophecies that are made in this Quran will live up to its expectations until the Day of Judgment. And therefore, in this book, we see that questions have been risen and the answers have been given. Unfortunately, sometimes when you don't understand the tone of Quran, we're unable to explain it to the others. When Quran talks about ayat and verses which merely get translated as, that Islam or Quran is preaching killing of the infidels and whatnot, then this is something where we need to step in and explain as to why these verses are there. Unfortunately, a lot of our people get influenced, go under the influence of those who are bringing these sort of verses in front of them to degrade Islam and to degrade Quran, and at the same time they bring the very delicate subject of women, that women are being deprived in Islam, and look, Quran also does not give them equal rights. So what we had deduced last night, that Islam gives equal rights, but there's a difference between equality and similarity. So yes, they're equal in regards to their own creations, but they might not be similar because they're both of their creation, men and women. As far as their creation is concerned, from the physical aspect and as well as from the psychological aspect, they differ from one another. Thus, Islam and the doctrine has given different in regards to similarities, different laws and different hukuk to each one of them. One of the degrading and humiliating view that we see in regards to women is that they consider them to be prelude to men. That women are created as a muqaddimah for the men. They're prelude to men. And Islam denounces that. If you look at Quran and the tone of Quran, we see it says, سَخَّرَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. At another place it says, سَخَّرَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ. One in Surah Hajj, second in Surah Luqman. What does it mean? It says, we have created for you whatever is in the world, in the earth. We have created for you whatever is in the skies. Nowhere does it mention that it is only speaking to one specific gender. No, it is only to the men that Allah is speaking, that whatever is created among the earth and the skies is only for the men. No. It is being mentioned for both of them. There's no differentiation between the two when it says سَخَّرَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ or سَخَّرَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Whatever is in the skies and whatever is in the earth is for everyone. No gender is being mentioned over here. And this is where we see, without mentioning the gender, moreover, Islam said in regards to both men and women that they are actually created for one another. Men are created for women and women are created for men. We refer towards this in Surah Baqarah, verse number 187. What does it say? It says, Hunna libasun lakum wa antum libasun lahun. They are your garment and you are their garment. Garment is being given an analogy over here that they cover you and you cover them. They are an ornament for you and you are an ornament for them. They hide your defects and you hide their defects. All of the functions that a libas has on human beings, men and women are in regards to that area, they are libas for one another. So in fact, Islam is denouncing this idea that women are prelude to men. Second, degrading and humiliating view of the past, which probably still exists, is that women were considered in relation to men means of bad luck and evil. And even today, in some parts of the world, they might even consider that. And they humiliate them, saying that, look, they're bad luck to you. But Islam comes, again, Quran comes and denounces this aspect. It says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Allah says He created azwajan litaskunu ilayha. Surah Rum, verse number 21. That we have created your mates, your spouses, without mentioning which spouse, husband or the wife, litaskunu ilayha, so that they may be sukoon for you, a matter of tranquility for you, a matter of peace for you, a matter of comfort for you. Not bad luck, not evil, none of those nonsense which people have been bringing about. Salawat bheji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad par. So similar rights? No. Equal rights? Yes. How do we explain that? Inshallah, as we gave some examples yesterday, we will mention more examples tonight. What is mentioned here from the perspective of Islam is that men and women are not similar. They're equal in their creation, but they're not similar in their creation in many aspects. And I'll give you examples. And this demands, obviously, that in the areas of hukuk, their rights, in the areas of their obligations, takalif, and the areas of mujazat, punishments, they are having different rights and different hukuk. They're treated differently. That doesn't mean they're treated unequally. No, they're treated differently because they're not similar to one another as far as the physical creation is concerned and as far as the psychological composition is concerned. Obligation-wise, a simple example of obligation. One of the obligations of men is that they have to attend the war in jihad. They have to do jihad. If an imam comes and tells you, or a prophet comes and tells you that you have to go and march towards jihad, you cannot say no to that. It becomes an obligation upon you. Obviously, it has to be coming from Imam Masum or Prophet. So if Imam of our time reappears and orders us for jihad, it will become wajib. It will not be like an option, ikhtiyari or by choice. Oh no, other people are going, it's wajib-e-kifai. Some people will go, we don't have to go. No, that will not be the case. It will become immediately wajib upon you. Jihad over here is not wajib at the moment, but as soon as Imam Masoom orders, it becomes wajib. But still at that time, it will not be wajib upon the women. Even in the history, if you look at all the wars that Muslims went to, nowhere did the women were obligated to attend these wars or these jihad, because it's not wajib upon them. Islam did not leave it to be wajib upon them. But as far as men are concerned, they cannot deny simply. Second, punishment. As far as the punishment is concerned, this is also a difference between the two. On many areas, in a lot of areas, as we said, they are similar, but on many occasions, they might be different one from one another. As far as apostasy is concerned, if a man, a Muslim, becomes apostate, we all know what is the had. It's idam, it's killing him. Death is the penalty for irtidad, for apostasy. But if a woman becomes an apostate, Islam does not say go ahead and kill her. There's no death penalty for women when it comes to apostasy. Why there's a difference between the two? Well, go ahead and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has set these doctrines. Their difference as far as their similarities are concerned, or as far as their creation is concerned, psychologically and physically, due to that fact, men would be given a death penalty, women would not be given a death penalty. Moreover, as far as the rights are concerned, if after marriage, a woman becomes insane, husband cannot rebuke this marriage or revoke this marriage. He has no right to leave her. But vice versa, after marriage, husband becomes insane, wife has the right to leave him. Given this leniency, you go ahead and ask Shari'iyat as to why. There are a lot of things that we cannot answer as to why, but we will explain a few things, what are similarities and what are the differences between the two. Salawat Beji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Unfortunately, in the West, or those doctrines which are trying to stand up against Islam, they're trying to stipulate similar rights for both genders by calling it to be equal rights. That is what is going on. And with overlooking women's creation and men's creation and the difference in their nature, this is where Islam differs from these doctrines and says in regards to men and women that they have equal rights, but they do not necessarily have similar rights. In Europe, even before 20th century, we see that there were no rights that existed for women. None whatsoever. And that is probably the reason that all of the sudden they see that there's a need in order to cover up for their previous mistakes. They're hastily making these equal rights for both genders with overlooking the claim, or with the overlooking that they both do not have these similarities. We're claiming equal rights, but again, I keep on reiterating, we're not claiming similar rights for both men and women. Difference between the creation of men and women. First, the physical differences. And I don't really need to, I'm basically just mentioning these things. You all know these things better than me. What are some of the physical differences? Men are more in certain things, women are more in certain things. For example, men, if you see an average body of men, is bigger than the average body of women. But then obviously you'll find exceptions in that regards as well. Men are taller majority of the time than women, if you go ahead and tally, if you go ahead and survey. Men are more rough and tough. Women are usually more delicate. Voice of men is thicker and is heavier. Voice of women is softer and tender. The muscular build of men is more than the muscular build of women. It could be exceptions over here, but this is usually the case. As far as women are concerned, women's growth is quicker than that of men's. They grow quicker. And that's why they reach bulugh before men do. So they reach the age of bulugh before men do. Some research say that fetus of a female grows faster than the fetus of the male. That is also a research. Women have more resistance in front of many illnesses than men do. Women will be able to resist many illnesses. Men will not be able to. This is just the way they're physically created. Women become mature quicker than men. Girls start speaking quicker than boys start speaking. And every size of the man is bigger than that of a woman. But in relation and comparison to the whole body, women's brain is bigger than that of the men. These are all some of the physical aspects of the differences that are between men and women. As far as the lungs function is concerned, men has more capability of breathing more air through their lungs than women do. Again, I asked the doctors and the medical science how they have proven that. Heartbeat of a woman is faster than the heartbeat of an average man. Just because of that, we see these are some of the physical differences. Psychological differences. Now, these physical differences, you might say, well, because of these physical differences, are we going to have different rights for men and women? No. These are just some of the examples that we're trying to prove through that this is a difference between as far as the creation is concerned. There's nothing degrading about either one of these. You can't degrade because men can, breathe better as far as their lungs are concerned, so you go ahead and give them better rights. No, this is not what we're trying to prove over here. What we are trying to prove is that there's a difference between the creation as far as the physical aspect is concerned. Psychologically, men are usually inclined towards, working out, sports, hunting, things that require more mobility and movement than women. We see that men's emotions are more confrontational, whereas women are more peaceful. They'll try to say, just leave it going, let it alone. Just try to end the argument. Men are more aggressive, whereas women are much more calmer. You might disagree with some of the things that I'm saying, but it is usually the study that has been done. Women avoid violence for themselves and others, which is why there's a less ratio of suicide in them than there is a ratio of higher suicide in men. Emotions of women are more fizzy. There's more jushan. They come very quickly than men. They also get agitated quicker. In other words, women in matters of their interest or fear goes under the influence of her emotion more quickly than men would, because men are more cold natures. It is, also it's harder for them to go under the influence. Women are naturally more inclined towards personal beautification, jewelry, decoration, and so on and so forth, as opposed to men who are not so much inclined towards that. Emotions of women are more unstable than the emotions of a man. Women are more cautious, more religious, more talkative, more timid, and more formal than men. Salawat beji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So you do see there's more religiousness in women in our houses than we do. And there's more of these aqaid that exist, the belief that they have, and their belief on different things are much more than we do. Don't do this. This will bring bad luck. This will bring this, and so on and so forth. There's nothing wrong with it. This is just the way that they have been created. Women's emotions are more maternal. What does that mean? I don't know the translation of it. Madarane. Tending towards the mother. Because from the very initial age, from the very beginning, they have this affection towards it. And we see it's shaping up from the very childhood from them. Men are more capable of keeping secrets than women. I guess nobody will disagree in this regard. That especially secrets which might be disturbing. For example, a death of someone. For example, an illness in someone which is, heart-wrenching. You don't want to mention it to everyone. It'll be difficult for women to keep that as opposed to men. Therefore, men can keep more secrets. For this matter, men have higher ratio of illness, which arises from keeping secrets than women do. Women are more tender-minded. Raqiqul qalb. Their heart is softer, raqiq in this regard than men, and they would weep and fall unconscious quicker than men would. Seeing something, seeing a scene or an object or something which is disturbing picture, they will have more emotions than men. Now, there's no exception. There's more exceptions over here. You might find some men to be more, emotional than women, but that's not what we're discussing. What we're discussing is the average as far as the men and women are concerned. And lastly, from the aspect of emotions from one another towards one another, this is also an area of study that I do not have time to go into. Inshallah, at another time, I will mention that. Salawat beji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. These are the few things that you see that you can count up as far as the difference in the physical aspect of men and women and as the psychological aspect of men and women exists. Nobody will deny these. When these two exist, they also require treatment from the aspect of the Creator. Tabarakallahu ahsanul khaliqeen. The one who is actually taking pride after creating mankind. That this is the ashraful makhluqat that I have created. The one who has created, he has better knowledge as to what should be going with which. What is more preferable for one gender and what is not preferable for the other gender. One hot topic is about inequality in testimony by men and women. I mentioned a few things yesterday in regards to divorce, the right of divorce, we explained that. In regards to inheritance, we explained that. In regards to other things that we had mentioned yesterday, we explained that. But one thing that I did not explain was the testimony of two as opposed to one. Why is it that Islam says one man's testimony is equal to two women's testimony? Some people might say, well, Moulana did not want to answer this because there's really no answer to it, so he just skipped through it. No, there's actually perfect explanation. There's nothing, brothers and sisters, as far as the Islamic doctrine and laws are concerned, that does not have a proper logical wisdom behind it. It's just a matter that you and I might not have the access to that, but Masumeen have not left any sort of place where you could point fingers or raise fingers saying that what is the reason and logic behind that. So one hot topic is the inequality in testimony. We read in Surah Baqarah, chapter 2, verse number 282, where this ayat is the longest ayat of Quran. And in this ayat, it's the whole page. It's the whole page from top to bottom. And in this ayah, it is basically talking about debts. And when it talks about the debts, it says, make sure that you write down what you take from one another. And also on top of that, bring witnesses alongside with it. This is the verse. It says, وَاسْتَشْهِدُوا شَهِيدَيْنِ مِنْ رِجَالِكُمْ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَكُونَ رَجُلَيْنِ فَرَجُلٌ وَإِمْرَأَتَانِ. And therefore bring witnesses for what you have written down. If there were two men, then it's fine. If there weren't two men, then رَجُلٌ وَإِمْرَأَتَانِ, one man and two women. مِمَّنْ تَرْضَوْنَ مِنَ الشُّهَدَاءِ, whoever you accept as far as their testimony is concerned. أَن تَظِلَّ إِحْدَاهُمَا فَتُذَكِّرْ إِحْدَاهُمَا الْأُخْرَى. Why two women? If one forgets, the other one will remind her. This is where our discussion is. That Islam, when it says, question is that why two women as opposed to one? What is the philosophy behind that? Is it lack of intellect? As we refer towards one of the letters of Amir al-Mu'mineen, where he also mentions the lack of intellect. Instead of saying that this khutbah or this letter could not be kalam of Imam Ali, there's actually explanation that the shurrah and the commentators of Nahj al-Balagha, they have given a perfect explanation about that. Lack of intellect, is that what it is being said over here? Because of the lack of intellect? That's what Amir al-Mu'mineen has said. They have one shahadat as opposed to the two of the women. Is that the reason? Therefore, we see that aql, which is being discussed over here, the lack of intellect, not having aql or being naqisul aql, that's the reason? If that was the reason, you look at it, that aql is actually a mayar ma bihil imtiyaz. It's the essence of humanity. It's the essence of humanity which differentiates mankind with animal. We are referred to as haywan and natiq. We are haywan in our nature, but because we have this nutq and this aql, we are different from animals. And therefore, anyone who has aql will become human, and anyone who doesn't, in this form, will remain an animal. And this is the reason we differentiate between animal, and this is the thing that we differentiate between animal and human beings. So if you're saying that if one man has one aql and woman has half of that aql, that means you're considering half a woman to be human and half of her to be an animal. Is it what is being referred to over here? No, brothers and sisters. The reason that is being mentioned over here, it could not have been lack of intellect and lack of aql. Rather, in testimonies, in giving shahadat, it's not about aql. Rather, it is about evidence. You bring the evidence when it comes to proving something. You're in the court of law. If you bring someone who is highest in their aql, for example, if you were living in the 40s and the 30s when Einstein was living, Einstein, who after a fallible person who had reached the highest level of intellect, if you want to call it, and then there was some sort of testimony that was going on. You bring two people, one of them Einstein, the other one a layman, saying that this layman actually saw what had happened and Einstein didn't see what had happened. Whose testimony would you go ahead and take? Because Einstein has more aql, will you take his testimony over the person who had actually witnessed the event? No. Aql says over here, no, you take the witness and testimony of the person who has seen the incident take place. He has more credibility over here than this person who might be at the highest level of his intellect. So there's no talk of intellect when it comes to giving shahadat. Therefore, when Amirul Mu'mineen also says that they lack intellect, he's not talking about this facility that this faculty that Allah has given to us in the name of aql. Rather, in that days or in those days, and even today in philosophy, aql actually refers towards the bigger mechanism of thinking for mankind, which includes aql as well, which includes our heart, which also includes the memory that insan has. Imam was not referring towards the concept of aql over there. Rather, Imam was referring towards the concept of memory and hafizah. Therefore, we see the difference between an insan and animal. A person in the time of Ayatollah Brojardi, they came and they asked him a question. What is the reason behind the hurmat of alcohol? Aside from what it says in Quran that, it is haram, what else is the reasoning behind it? He gave a very beautiful answer. And this is where you see the fuqahat of such marja, Ayatollah Brojardi. He said the reason is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created mankind, and He has given them aql. And this aql is something which is the mayar of differentiating between animal and man. If a man drinks, he loses his aql. And he lowers down to the level of haywan, animal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who says, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ, does not want to see man at the same level of animals. Therefore, drinking alcohol is haram according to Islam. If you want a logic, this is the logic. Otherwise, we have proof from Quran, the ayat of Quran, which also mentions that Salawat Beji Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. So testimony is based on evidence and not aql. And this is why we see in some sections of shahadat in Islam, in the doctrine, that there's no mention of aql. It is all based on evidence through senses, what you had seen, what you had witnessed, what you had heard, what you had felt, what was tangible and what was intangible. That's why these words that are used in the books of hadith, in hadith and narrations such as qalb or fu'ad and heart, these are not literally referring towards this physical aspect that we have. Rather, they're referring towards sometimes soul, sometimes they're referring towards our brain, sometimes they're referring towards our intellect. Therefore, in the letter, Imam Ali said was not about the deficiency in intellect. Rather, it was deficiency in remembrance, in the hafizah that was being lacking over there. Second thing that they say, according to this ayat that we say that one man and two women, I still haven't answered that. Is it lack of adalat or lack of taqwa? Because one of the conditions for a person who is testifying that he should be adil. Is it the reason that women do not have adalat and do not have taqwa? Again, there's no mention of any of the genders having less taqwa or having less adalat than the other. You pick up all of the scriptures, Quran and even the ahadith, you do not find any sort of discrimination between the two. It is also in the sense that you look at a person who leads the prayer. Person who's imam of Jamad, one of the conditions for that is what? That they have to be adil. Now a man cannot stand behind a woman and pray. A woman could not be imam of Jamad and man would be praying. This is something which is not allowed. But there's no stopping of a woman if she wants to lead the prayer of other women. She could become the imam for other women and she could lead the prayers. So if she was lacking adalat and justice, she would not be leading the prayers for other women. It's just that for men it is not allowed. Therefore we from here understand that they're not lacking any type of adalat, nor are they lacking any type of taqwa. Because the criteria, the Quran says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Again, not mentioning any type of gender. The best among you, the most honorable among you are the ones who have the highest amount of taqwa. There's no mention of gender that only males could reach that highest level of taqwa. And women cannot reach that higher level of taqwa. Salawat Bheji Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad par. I'll go through these things very quickly. High in emotions. Is that the reason why there are two testimonies from women and one from men? We see that testimony and judgment are both matters in which insan has to deal heavily with his emotions. And therefore, you are giving shahadat for someone and you're giving shahadat against someone. Men and women both are equal in their desires, but when it comes to affections and emotions, there's a huge difference between the two creations, between the two khilqat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We see that, for example, love of a father towards his kids and the love of the mother towards her kids, the same kids. Might, if you want to go ahead and put on a scale, might be same. Father could say that I love my kids the same amount that their kids' mothers do. So a mother would come and say, I love my kids so much. Father would come and say, I love my kids so much. And they might be at the same scale level as far as their, a love is concerned for both of them. But what is difference between the two is that when it comes to affection, when it comes to emotion, women are at a stronger level than the men. What does that mean? It means, in other words, they go under the influence quicker than the men. Child would come and say, Mom, I didn't do it. Although you caught him doing something mischievous, child would come and tell the mother, no, I really didn't do it. I got caught into something or whatnot. Mother would right away believe in him. Right away she would believe in him. If you bring something emotional in front of a mother, right away she will fall for that and she will go under her emotions and she will accept that more quickly than a man would do so. And this is the reason that they're higher in emotions and men are not as high in emotions. Lastly, inability to remember. This is why Quran, the last part of the ayat of this says is أَن تَزِلَّ إِحْدَاهُمَا فَتُذَكِّرْ إِحْدَاهُمَا الْأُخْرَى. Remind, so have two, so that if one forgets, the second one remind. Does that mean that they have lack of ability to remember things? Or does that imply that men can remember better than the women? Is that what we're trying to say? That, men have a better sense of memory than the women do? No, this is not what is being said over here. In fact, one of the reasons for those who narrate the ahadith is also the person's level of memory. They said this person who has narrated this in the chain of the narrators, he was a Shia, he was a Isna Ashari, he was a righteous man, but he tended to forget. He had this illness of forgetting a lot. Right away, all the ahadith that you get from this person, they will be useless. Because one of the reasons for narration of ahadith is that this person should not have the habit of forgetting. Therefore, so what we are concluding, that memory of women, is it less than that of men? No. Rather, what is being mentioned over here is that something else. If you have lack of interest or no interest in some topic, you will pay lesser attention towards it. Now I'm trying to derive or gather your attention about this very dry subject of, which might not be of your interest, but I'm sure on the other side of the wall, women are taking it very enthusiastically because it's discussing their right and their status. Men say, well, so what do we care if the status of women is being discussed? It might not be of your interest. So you might not remember a lot of things that I have said, but I go ahead and ask the women, if they're paying attention, they'll remember what have been said. In regards to, for example, sports, a lot of women are not taking part in sports. They don't really care for sports. You ask me, we're talking about, what happened in Super Bowl, what happened in baseball, what happened in other sports. We're discussing, even if they follow, they really don't have that enthusiastic level of discussion in regards to sports as men would do. Why? Because of lack of interest. When you have lack of interest in certain subjects, you don't remember every single thing about that. And you don't try to remember every single thing about that. What am I trying to derive from this aspect is, back in the day and as well as now, Islam's criteria was that women usually stayed back in the homes. They didn't really get out of the house. They did not really take interest in the transactions their husbands were making with the people in the community. They didn't really care for the transactions their brothers were involved in with other people in the society. They weren't taking much interest in these laws of bearing witnesses outside of the house. Why? Because everything was taken outside of the house. The murder that has taken place outside of the house, outside on the street, a woman who has never stepped out of the house, Islam does not want to bring this woman into the court, does not want to drag them in and out of the court so their name is pronounced to the people, their father's name is pronounced to the people, their husband's name is pronounced to the people. Islam wants to keep them away from all of these commotion, and that is the reason it says that they might not remember if they are eventually called up for some witness or some testimony. Let's make sure that two of them come, because if one has a bad memory, has forgotten, then the second one will come and go ahead and explain that aspect to them. Salawat bhiji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We don't find in regards to Janab Sayyida as well, or in regards to Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayhima either, that they ever stepped out of the house unnecessarily. That doesn't mean women today shouldn't go outside of the house. No. Whenever there was a need, even Janab Sayyida went outside of the house. When she had to demand her right, she went out of the house. And she was about to open her hair, where Amir al-Mu'mineen stopped her. Oh Sayyida, don't do that. Adab of Ilahi will take over this Medina, and I don't want that to happen. Asked Salman to take Sayyida back home. She stepped out of the house. There was a need of it. We look in regards to Janab Zainab, the places that she went. If she had choice, she would not have gone. To the extent that we know about Janab Zainab, that a person who lived next door to Amir al-Mu'mineen, what did he say? He said, I lived for so many years next to Amir al-Mu'mineen. I knew he had a daughter by the name of Zainab, but I never heard the voice of Zainab, nor had I ever seen physically Janab Zainab. Because there was never need for her to go out. Even in regards to, and this should not discourage the women, even in regards to going to masajid. In a hadith we read from Rasulullah that best place for a woman to pray is their houses. But if they can make it to the masjid without any trouble, without any obstacle, they will get the same sawab as the men do. But the best place for them is the secrecy of their house. In the secret, in their houses, in the privacy of their houses. This is something which is mentioned in ahadith. This is not discouraging them. This is why we see Salatul Jum'ah is also something which is not wajib on the women, because it requires you going outside of the house. But if they come for Salatul Jum'ah, they'll get the same reward as the men are getting. So brothers and sisters, what we are trying to conclude from these 2 days talk that we had, yes, Islam talks about the equality of the hukuk and the rights, but does not talk about the similarity of the hukuk of the rights. For all the above mentioned differences that exist between the two, it is not in regards to degrading one gender or giving higher status to the other gender. No, this was not the case at all, because at every step of the moment, Islam has mentioned in regards to men and women, their statuses, and even the history of Islam and history of mankind is filled with many examples from exemplary men as well as exemplary women. We gave a few examples yesterday as well. But today, there's no time, and I don't want to go into much further details of these things, and I don't want to take too much time of yours as far as the Masaib is concerned. So we'll stop over here. Then look at the musibat of Janab Sayyida. The Janab Sayyida, after the death of Rasulullah, and not too long after the death of Rasulullah, that we see that the Masaib are start to fall upon Janab Sayyida. And this is where, when we had stopped yesterday, we were talking about how Janab Sayyida, after spending not too much of a time, 75 days by some narrations, or 95 days by some narrations, she finds herself to be on the deathbed now. The incident you all remember, that what happened, that she comes home, Asma sees that Sayyida has gotten better and she's recovering from the loss of her father. But today Janab Sayyida tells Asma, oh Asma, that I'm going to go into my room and perform the ibadat. As long as you keep hearing my voice, do not bother me. But once you don't hear my voice, knock once. If I don't answer, knock second time. And if I don't answer, knock the third time and come inside. That will be the time that my ruh has left. ये वो वक्त होगा कि जब मेरी रूह इस दुनिया से परवास कर चुकी है. बस अस्मा ने ये किस तरीके से पैगाम जनाब सैयदा का लिया होगा. एक दफ़ा अपने काम में मशगूल हो जाती हैं, देखती हैं कि बीवी की आवाज़ आ रही है, लेकिन कुछ देर के बाद से आवाज़ आना बंद हो जाती है. अस्मा उसी तरीके से जिस तरह से बीवी ने बयान किया था, दरवाज़े को खटखटाती हैं, लेकिन कोई जवाब नहीं आता है. दोबारा दरवाजे को खटखटाती हैं, कोई जवाब नहीं आता है. तीसरी दफ़ा जब दरवाजे को खटखटाया तो कोई जवाब नहीं आया. जाके देखा तो जनाब सैयदा इस दुनिया से गुजर चुकी हैं. लेकिन सिर्फ अस्मा के लिए इस दुनिया से गुजर चुकी थीं. अभी जनाब अमीरुल मोमिनीन के लिए और अपनी औलाद के लिए इस दुनिया से नहीं गुजरी थीं. अमीरुल मोमिनीन को जैसे ही ये ख़बर मिलती है, अमीरुल मोमिनीन फ़ौरन घर में आते हैं. जैसे घर में पहुँचते हैं, आके देखते हैं ख़वातीन का हाल. क्या कहते हैं? मल ख़बर, क्या ख़बर है? वमाली अरा कुन्ना मुतग़य्यरातिल वजूह वस्सुवर, क्या मैं देख रहा हूँ कि तुम्हारे चेहरों की कम्प्लेक्शन मुख्तलिफ हुई हुई है, तुम्हारे चेहरे मुतग़य्यर हुए हैं. क्या जवाब मिलता है? अदरिक इब्नत अम्मिक वमा नज़ुन्नुक तदरुकहा. ए अमीरुल मोमिनीन, अपने अमीरुल मोमिनीन जनाब सैयदा को दर कीजिए, और हम नहीं समझते कि आप उनको अब दर कर पाएंगे. جناب سیدہ کو در کیجئے۔ امیر المؤمنین کمرے میں داخل ہوتے ہیں، اخذ الامام عن راسہ وحل ازرا، امام امیر المؤمنین نے اپنے امامے کو اتارا، اپنے امامے کو سر سے ہٹا دیا، جناب فاطمہ کی بالین پہ پہنچتے ہیں اور فرماتے ہیں کلمینی یا فاطمہ فانا ابن عمک علی ابن ابی طالب، اے فاطمہ مجھ سے گفتگو کیجئے، میں علی ابن ابی طالب ہوں، آپ کے چچا کا بیٹا علی ابن ابی طالب ہوں۔ بس یہ سننا تھا کہ جناب سیدہ نے آنکھیں کھولیں، کہتی ہیں یا ابو الحسن لم یبق لی الا رمق من الحیات، اے علی اب میرے اندر بالکل بھی رمق نہیں رہی حیات کی، انی لاجد الموت الذی لا بد منہ ولا محیص عنہ، اے علی میری عمر کی تمام ہوئی اور موت کو درک کر رہی ہوں، آپ بچوں کو دیکھیے گا۔ یہ سنتے ہیں امیر المؤمنین ایک دفعہ آواز دیتے ہیں یا زینب یا ام کلثوم یا حسن یا حسین حلموا تزودوا من امکم فہذا الفراق واللقاء فی الجنہ، اے بچوں، اے ام کلثوم، اے زینب، اے حسن، اے حسین آؤ اور اپنی والدہ سے کو در کرو، کیونکہ یہ فراق ہے اب جنت تک، اب تم ان کی آواز نہ سن پاؤ گے، اب تم ان سے نہ ملاقات کر پاؤ گے۔ دیکھیے امام کے بلانے کا طریقہ، امام نے پہلے زینب اور ام کلثوم کو آواز دی، پہلے جب کچھ دیا جاتا ہے تو کہتے ہیں کہ بیٹیوں کو صدا دو، زینب اور ام کلثوم کو آواز دی، چاہتے ہیں کہ ماں کے پاس پہلے بیٹیاں آ جائیں، لیکن ہائے کچھ روایات میں ملتا ہے کہ زینب اور حسین نے آنے سے انکار کر دیا۔ حسین کہتے ہیں کہ میں جب تک نہ آؤں گا، جب تک مادر گرامی مجھے اسی طرح سے نہ بلائے جیسے پہلے بلایا کرتی تھیں، بس یہ سننا تھا۔ کہتے ہیں ایک دفعہ کفن کے بند کھلے، دونوں ہاتھ باہر نکلے سیدہ کے، کہا اپنے بیٹے کو صدا دی یا حسین، حسین قریب آ گئے، آغوش میں لے لیا۔ اس طریقے سے فراق ہوا۔ جناب سیدہ کی ان وصیتوں کو پورا کرتے ہوئے امیر المؤمنین میں تاریکی شب میں دفنایا۔ میں کہوں گا جناب سیدہ کہ آپ نے یہ وصیتیں کی، اس طریقے کا جنازہ تو نہ ملا جو آپ کے شایان شان ہوتا، لیکن کم از کم جنازہ نصیب ہوا اور آپ کو بازار میں نہ آنا پڑا۔ ارے آپ نے صرف کہا تھا کہ میں اپنے بال کھول دوں گی، لیکن اس کی نوبت نہ آئی۔ آئیے کربلا میں دیکھ جناب زینب اور ام کلثوم سروں پہ چادر نہیں ہے، کوفہ اور شام سے گزر رہی ہیں، تماشا کرنے والے دیکھ رہے ہیں اور کوئی پوچھنے والا نہیں ہے۔ الا لعنۃ اللہ القوم الظالمین وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون۔